Welcome to Fancounters. My name's Nick.
And I'm Elizabeth.
And you can find us on Instagram at Fancounters Live. We're on Facebook if you search Fancounters. Our private Facebook group is called Sharpie Nation. And if you want to get in touch with us personally,
you can email us at hello@fancounters.com.
All right. Well, I was going to do this last week, Elizabeth, but you weren't on. Like, we didn't. I wanted to say we didn't hook up, but we literally didn't hook up, and we figuratively didn't hook up
right.
to do the show on the phone and stuff. So here's the deal. We had a podcast review us on their show. And it would have been more appropriate to have played this clip last week because what they're going to talk about is a severe issue I had 2 episodes ago with a person on the phone that I was interviewing, and they had very poor audio quality. Their cell phone, like they were in Texas. I mean, they must have been on a ranch in the desert because the audio quality suffered greatly, and I did everything I could in post to clean up this audio so that it was listenable because it was very muffled and hard to understand. So I had to pick out just his audio and clean it up and leave mine the way it was. And so it was a lot of cutting and pasting, and it was not a fun thing to do.
Okay.
So these guys are going to kind of talk about something along those lines. So we were featured on a podcast called Those Guys from Wichita. So if we care about what these Kansas people have to say about our podcast, this is what we'll be talking about.
The next one was called Fancounters, which is celebrity interviews. And I didn't listen to much of this. I don't care about celebrities.
Right.
And what I will say is I did listen to the opening of it, and it sounded like it's top-notch, professional. The intro was great.
Okay.
The main host is just one guy that's the main host of it. Fantastic. Very articulate. I mean, everything sounded great. And I got into a little bit of the interview he had, which was just a journeyman actor that's been on everything. I don't know him by name, but all the shows he'd been on.
I'll interject here. It was Greg Daniel. That's the show he listened to, which actually had top-notch audio from what I thought. But anyway, let's continue.
The thing is, anytime you do a show like that, it's just like watching Live with Regis and Kelly or whoever.
Sure.
With this kind of technology, sure, you can do it now, but the celebrities that are calling in call you in on their cell phone because they're not going to stop what they're doing.
Sure.
And just like when we call KFC customer service, you get what you get as far as the audio. And to base your whole show around that interview, it's one side's great.
Yeah.
Your side in the studio sounds amazing.
Exactly.
But the other side doesn't sound as good. But if you're into listening, and he did have good questions for this guy about, how do you not get typecast and all this stuff that you'd want to hear if you're into celebrities. But I'm not. I'll just say that he's got as far as the best sounding studio quality, he sounded amazing.
Wow.
And then moving in, once you interview, then it kind of sucks. And it's not his fault. You can only do what you can do.
Exactly.
All right. So that was the review. Overall, pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, we do have good questions.
So. I mean, but that has always been my stance. I believe that you do wonderful vetting of our guests and that you ask wonderful questions. And I think that's one of the main things we get from our guests is that, hey, no one's ever asked me that before. And I think that's one of the things that makes our podcast stand out from everybody else's is that it truly is, like we didn't just ask you the basic questions. You've delved into their past and asked them something that maybe they hadn't thought of in a while.
And that's true for this week's show. We've got a guy, not a household name, Joe Finfera. He's been on tons of soap operas, but I listened to a lot of shows that he was on because I didn't want to ask those same questions. In fact, it's funny. Every interview he does, they're like, well, how'd you get into acting? Well, guess what? We don't care. Here's what I want to know about what you left out of that story. So I told him off the bat, I'm not going to ask you anything you've been asked before because that's boring. And he was like, wow, really? And, he was surprised I wasn't going to ask him how he got into acting. And, in this interview you're going to hear today, we bring up a lot of stuff that wasn't even on my sheet because it just flowed really well. He was a very good inspirational speaker. And I told him at the end of the show, I'm like, you need a podcast because the way he speaks is so energetic and informative. And he's got a lot of great personal victories in his life and that kind of thing. So I think you'll enjoy it today. But, the other thing, too, I don't know if you caught it. We're like Regis and Kelly.
I did catch that, except according to them, you're the only person on our podcast. It's a single guy.
Well, because that's the episode they listen to.
Right.
You need to come back. You really do. You're missed.
I 100% want to come back. I do. I have missed this greatly, and I miss the interaction with our guests and when our fans chit-chat on the Sharpie Nation. And so I very much miss being in the studio, and I'm hoping that pretty soon you and I will feel safe enough to be able to tape some shows together.
I sure hope so. That's my hope, because it's very lonely doing these shows as a one-person thing, and I can't ask any sensitive questions because that's your job.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So on the show this week, like I mentioned, Joe Finfera is here. He has been on, I'm going to tell you guys, he's done the soap opera circuit. From One Life to Live, Guiding Light, As the World Turns, and most recently he was on Young and the Restless, Days of Our Lives, General Hospital. Today we're going to be talking about a guy who's not just an actor, but he's a vice president of a marketing company. His name's Joe Finfera. He's got a very inspirational story. He is coming up right now.
Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is Fancounters with Nick and Elizabeth on the Podfix Network.
There was this mob of people, and they're screaming my name.
Crazy fans.
Stop following me. Don't come around my house. If you do, the cops are going to be at yours.
If I'm having dinner with my wife, don't sit down at my table. Don't follow me into the bathroom.
Can I take a picture? We're going to, oh my God.
I think this guy wants to fight me. Ended up being a fan.
I'm the only one that's ever been on Sam Jackson and lived to tell about it.
Well, guess what? I have a big surprise for you.
That's why we call it Fancounters.
I don't think you're going to last on the air very long.
Joe Finfera, welcome to Fancounters. Thanks for being here.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
I really am fascinated by your career. In fact, I've spent the last couple of weeks doing research on you, which is both good and bad because maybe I found out some things you didn't know about. You are an actor, but you're also an entrepreneur. You are working in corporate America, and you went to college, and not a lot of actors, let's stereotype a little bit. Maybe not a lot of actors do, because if you're going to go that direction, you kind of just go for it. But you went to college first, then got into acting. So what was your degree in? Was it acting related?
No, it was, I really appreciate your research, first of all. I went to University of Baltimore, and my degree was in business management. So it was not in theater whatsoever.
Business management, did you start out, now I know your first gig was a Powerball commercial, and that's kind of when the bug hit you, but you had worked in corporate America before that, right? What were you doing?
That's right. I still do both, but yeah, I was an insurance agent when I got my AA degree first, actually, and then I worked in the insurance industry after I had my AA. So I was a licensed auto insurance agent when I was, I think, just about 18 years old. And I did that for my last 2 years of college. So I went to school full time at University of Baltimore, and then I worked full time. Went to school at night and got my bachelor's degree. And then, of course, I was actually working out too. I was working and competing my last 2 years of college. So I started working out really heavy. Then I started getting involved in all these things, and I became one busy young man. And my goal was to kind of like to start life really in the driver's seat and to get a really good jump start. I visualize myself jumping out of the horse races, a horse going out of the
right out of the gate,
right out of the gate for the race. And so I had my bachelor's degree. I started to, I was working out and stuff, and then I started to, I wanted to compete. So then I competed, and but my degree was in management, and I loved management, and I thought management was the safest thing for a degree to be in because you can do just about anything.
Absolutely.
So I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I do know that every business needs a manager. So I figured, well, I'm safe there. And so I did that, and then of course as I'm doing that, I started getting the other bug, the film bug, and television bug, and commercials and things like that. So but management, and and it has done me well. I'm very fortunate. I'm one of those guys. I know my personality. You have to discover who you are, but for me, having stability was key, and I knew I'd need to have that. And if I didn't have any type of foundation, I thought that mentally I'd have a hard time with that. And it's true. I think if anybody that when you're dealing with, you make different decisions. Plus, I see, all of us growing up, we see these young actors, actresses, or actors, well, yeah, actors, and the young people, and they get these parts, and then the parts are done, and then they're left with nothing. And a lot of times they could end up spending the money as they're making because they don't realize that money doesn't just come like that.
Sure.
And when you work, and so I really feel like I really did have a good eye on what's going on in the world, and I saw these people. And I knew that I wanted to have a degree to fall back on. And I know I have a really good friend who didn't finish school, and he's done very, very well. And so, but I'm a different personality, and I also believe in science. He's a Virgo, and he never finished school, but he's done very, very well. So I guess we all have our different paths. But thank you for researching it. But my degree's in management.
Okay. So you ended up doing a Powerball commercial. Did you have an agent that got you that gig? How did you land your very first commercial?
Back in Baltimore, I think I did have an agent. It was kind of weird back then because it was many years ago. It was back in the 90s, early 90s. And back then you could just contact the casting company. There's casting companies in the Baltimore area, and you're dealing with local commercials typically. And there's always commercials on the air. For whatever market, commercials aren't always national. So you have different regional type commercials. So there were casting offices. I just literally went through the phone book and looked up casting companies, and then I would send them information. They'd tell me what I needed to do. And then back then it was just sending them a headshot and a resume.
Yep.
And that's what I did. And then so the casting company actually gave me a call. And then, of course, I think back then too, I worked with anybody. I mean, you could be with agencies too. So I think, and you're not, and when you're younger like that, you can have your information with many different agents or casting people. So you're kind of like putting your feelers out there.
So you get that commercial, the bug hits you, and at some point you feel like you can go at this full time. So you leave Baltimore, you go to New York City, not a huge deal because it's like 2 or 3 hours away, right? Where you become a fitness model, you end up on a calendar. And I know that when you were shopping at a Spencer's store, you walked in and you saw this calendar. My question was, and you never answered, I was listening to this at one interview you did, you never answered whether you bought it or not. Did you buy it with her? Like, how weird was that to buy your own calendar?
That's a good question. That's really good. I like the fact you're listening. So the answer is no. I didn't have to buy it because I was able to contact I contacted the photographer, and then at that point, I was able to get copies. All
right. So as you're working in New York, we're going to move on to actually the first time you get to walk onto a set. And for me, being a film guy, I've made films. I have gone to Hollywood so many times to watch my favorite shows be filmed. There is nothing like walking onto a soundstage of a show that you've either watched or even if you haven't, just to see the hanging lights and the fake rooms and all this stuff. What was that like for you when you were the day player on One Life to Live and then Guiding Light? Tell me about the first time walking on those sets and exploring and, what were you feeling and thinking at that very first time?
It was surreal. First of all, it was great because there's all these things you see, but the first thing you think, wow, it's not as big as I thought it was. Or there's, and a lot of times when there's a window that's outside, behind it's like a big old light. It's supposed to be the sun, So it was really interesting to see. And then of course you see like 7 different like sets or rooms. And there's nothing behind them. It's just you're looking in. There's no like fourth wall there. It's you have the 3 walls, but the fourth one where the camera is. There's no wall there. So it's really interesting. It's kind of like a big old dollhouse. The dollhouse is my daughter. I bought a dollhouse for my daughter, and so I don't know if any or a kid's like a little house that you play in, and there's the back wall. It's all open, so it looks like that. And it was interesting. It's smaller than what you thought. But it's just incredible. It was just absolutely incredible. It was euphoric, surreal, and it was exciting to see the other side. When you watch television now, you only see the end result, and really, it's almost like stepping onto a construction zone, because you have these people that are moving stuff. There's big, back then the cameras were huge,
right,
on these roller wheels, and these big things. It is literally like it feels like a construction set. So there's many things that are kind of different, and it's like it's the actual doing it is not glamorous whatsoever. I think the glamour comes at the end result, and but it was definitely euphoric, and it's definitely a good feeling, and I still get it now, and if I ever, when I do get stuff and I got to go into, let's say, a Paramount or anything like that, I think Paramount is for me, when I drive by it or go go through it, I just always get that. It's just an incredible feeling just being able to walk on, or even on the Burbank Studios, Warner
Brothers.
Studios.
Yep.
It's such a good feeling walking through the gate when you go to these big sound stages. I'll never get tired of that.
Did you feel lost the first time that you were an actor on, say, One Life to Live or even Guiding Light, to know kind of where to be and where to stand and what areas you could and couldn't be in? Was that overwhelming for you?
It wasn't really overwhelming. It was you have every kind of emotion going on, and I would say it's almost like I've never jumped out of a plane, but you do have this little bit of anxiety too, because it does feel like and if it's the first time you've had lines on something. I know the first time I had lines on let's say a Guiding Light, where it was towards the end of the day and the crew's all around, and this is New York now, so you got these New York guys, and they're like, we better, when I know I was getting ready to do my part, and the camera guys, there was like 4 of them, they said, we better get this in one take. And I tell you, that scared the hell out of me. I thought, wow, they're going to kill me.
Yeah,
I got to do this in one take, and that's what they expect, because with these soaps, they're filming every single day, and you have to be fast. You have to do this. So I'll still, just the fact that I remember it now and how tough that was when I heard the cameraman saying, we better get this in one take. And I'm like, and obviously, I look back now, it's like they wanted me to hear it. Like, you better not mess this up, dude. Young man, you better not mess this up, because if I'm late going home to dinner, you're in trouble. These are a bunch of New York guys, and I'm one of those, and I've grown into one of those New York guys myself. So, but it was definitely a little bit, it's scary.
I won't call you an expert, but you have been on the set of more than 5 soap operas, including The Young and the Restless, Days of Our Lives, and General Hospital. What set seemed to you to be the most smooth? Now, we know that with soap operas, they're filming very fast because they have a show on 5 days a week. So we know that it cruises, but what set to you is the most efficient, and which one, give us kind of the compare-contrast to those sets.
I would have to say it's kind of similar. They all operate similar. It's because these shows have been on for so long. Like, for example, Guiding Light was a radio show before it was a television show, and my grandmother used to listen to Guiding Light on the radio, but it's a machine. All of these are really a machine, and they're all a machine, and they all run smooth. I can't say one ran smoother than the other. They all just, because they know they literally have no choice, because they are on every day. They have to operate at a different capacity than any other show. Because if you think about, let's say, a sitcom, it's once a week, or a regular drama, it's once a week. But you got it, let's say, a half an hour long show that they're filming every single day, that's on every day. So they have to really make it a fine oiled machine. And I would say they all operate the same. They're all efficient. And I never really had a bad experience on any of them. It is nice, though, when you come to a certain age and you've done enough where you feel confident. I know when I was doing something on General Hospital just recently, I saw something. I'm like, hey, can we do it this way? This one, it works better. And you feel, when you get a little bit older and you've been doing it for a while, you have your intelligence levels, it's a little bit more. So you're not afraid to speak up and say something versus when you're younger and just kind of getting into it, you may not have spoken up about something that you can make it smoother.
Now, at what point did you make that move from New York to Los Angeles? Was it pre-children or after?
It was pre-children. It was definitely pre-children. And you may have heard the story. I literally was, living in New York and waiting. I'm definitely spiritual. I'm a spiritual person, and sometimes I fall out of it. But I am spiritual, and I believe in certain things. And my grandfather told me, because he was an actor in LA for a little bit of time, and he was doing stuff in Maryland, and he said, "Don't go to California until they call you to go." And speaking from his own experience, he said it was very lonely. So I literally waited in New York City. I was doing things, but for 9 years, I waited for a call. And I believe, the way my mindset was, I wasn't going to go until I got that call. And no matter what age it was, it didn't mean I wasn't going to try to do things to get the call.
Sure.
I would put things out there. I would do things, but nothing seemed to happen. And then it's just crazy that I got the call, and they said, "Hey, it's a good time for you to come out." And it was a call like, you have something on your mind. It really happened. And I got the call that my grandfather said, "Don't go until you get that call," and I got it. So it was great. And I moved to California.
And was it for something you ended up booking?
Yeah. I came out. There was nothing guaranteed. I was told by a friend it was a good time to come to California, so I knew I had some opportunities there. And what's really crazy too, and just from talking with you, I think you operate probably on a different level, or another, because there's other levels of our thinking. But I do believe in writing things down, and I literally wrote kind of my desires and what I wanted down. I wrote it down, and pretty soon after, I ended up getting the call. But when I got the call to go out, I knew there was opportunities, but nothing was guaranteed to me.
Okay.
So it's still like a blind faith going out there that, I have a good opportunity because I have some people that, that have my back and will be looking out for me. And, of course, you need that. And that's huge. So yeah, I didn't have anything guaranteed. So I had to go there and fight for what I wanted to get.
No, we operate a lot the same. I've created many dream boards in my lifetime as far as things I could look at every day and really go for. So, no, we're on the same wavelength here. I think kind of anybody in that creative space.
I need to do more of that, and I'm trying to let my kids know it's possible. And like for me, I don't want to push anything on them, but I do go to them and say, everything we do starts from a thought. And take it from there. But I do know I could do a better job of writing things down and really focusing on that. So, but every time I've done things like that, it has worked. And so I'm glad you're in the same wavelength. It's great.
Well, it's something about playing. It's almost like you're playing a trick with your mind. If you see it enough times, you just you do what you need to do to make it happen. Now, you mentioned your grandfather working in the industry. In fact, he worked with the Three Stooges. Now, do you have any good stories about the Three Stooges for us?
No really good Stooges. I just know it was an episode, and we didn't really get too much information on that. I know as a child, I used to watch the show a lot.
Me too.
Yeah, he said the episode, there was a big bonfire, and that's pretty much all I was able to get about that. So, nowadays, everything, we're able to grab things more now, and the ability to archive is much better than it was back then.
That's for sure.
But not too much on that. It was just that story. But I do know this: the Three Stooges, they filmed on Gower Street, and it's the Gower Studios. Right by, and when I first moved out here, that's where I lived. So that was pretty cool. So it was neat going to some place where my grandfather once was.
Yeah.
When he was out here, just knowing that. So yeah, it was neat.
You were in acting, you were taking on roles, you were doing what you needed to do on the side to kind of keep the money coming in. But as soon as the kids came, it was time for you to say to yourself, you hadn't gotten a solid series or anything like that. You'd done a lot of day play roles, multiple episodes, that sort of thing. So you go out and you decide, I got to just take on a real job to be the supporter for my family, which is very admirable. So tell me a little bit about that decision to sort of walk away from the industry almost for a decade, right?
Yes, for a good decade. when you have a child coming, right, and I was still looking for jobs, but you got to realize having a child is a huge responsibility. And I know I always wanted to be a father. And I remember when I was younger, when I was in high school, when I was running track, I would always, when I used to do long distance running, and then when you run, you get the chance to think about things, and I'd think about my future. And I know one of the big things I wanted in my life was to be a father, and I literally saw a boy and a girl. I saw my son and I saw my daughter. I saw them in my mind, and I know I wanted to do good in sports, so I wanted them to be proud of me. And then when my first child was coming, I'm like, yeah, I had to really do some different things. And it didn't mean I wasn't going to try anymore. It just meant that the priority was really making sure that they had money. I actually had, the day my son was born, I actually had an audition for I think it was for a sitcom or something. And I gotta tell you, any person that's a parent, the day your child is born, to go out and talk to them, you're at such an elevated hyper state.
Oh yeah.
They probably thought I was crazy, but I really believe they thought I was crazy, because the day he was born, and I was looking at it, and obviously I wasn't going to go, but it all timed out right. There was enough time that after everything was settled, I had enough time to go to the audition. But literally doing that, and looking back in retrospect, it was definitely a mistake. But you can't not, if you can make it, you should go. But I know I was definitely super hyperactive. But to have an audition, several hours after the child's born was, of course, my son's mother, we were, she was a singer, so she was very understanding about that. And obviously, she was just wanted me to get to that audition too, because it was part of our future together for our son. So it wasn't like she was like thinking, you can't go. It was very, very supportive, because that would be something for all of us that would help all of us.
For sure. Yeah, it's still surprising. I don't think you could have pulled me away from the hospital, even if I knew that it was like something to support my family the day that, like, we just have two 8-year-old twins. So,
okay.
that was a huge day, and there's a lot of drama about that, but to leave right after they're born, that had to be a difficult thing to do.
It was difficult, but it was because it was for all of us, and it was only for just it was like going to, literally, and it was at, my son was born at Cedar Sinai, so it was really close to where the audition was. So I was only gone an hour.
Oh, okay.
So everything was timed. It wasn't bad. So it worked out really good. And I came right back. But, my son's mother wanted me to do it because, this would have given us what we were looking for. Have it all one thing, so at one time. So, yeah.
That's a pretty cool story, though. Do you remember the show name that you went out for?
I don't remember. I just know that
that they thought you were crazy.
I was hyper. I was super hyper. And, and obviously whatever the character was calling for, it was hard to come out of that, because I was just so hyper and excited about being a father that, I was pretty hyper about it.
Now, your resume right now looks like you are doing quite a few projects. You don't have a problem finding work, that's for sure. What I want to know is, because at this point in your life, you're a VP of a marketing company. Is that right?
Correct. And I'm on cloud nine with that too. So, I worked on many years. I take my management degree. So I'm literally using my management degree now. And I work in the marketing, and I was able to I did a lot of TV commercials. And one thing, I was always working on a commercial. I used to always talk to the marketing exec. So I did a Nike commercial. I did a bank commercial. I always talked to them about demographics and where it was going to air and why they actually hired me. They hire every single thing in a commercial is meant for a particular region and where it's going to go. So they look at all that stuff. So their audience and where it's going to air. And so I really took a liking to marketing, and so I had an opportunity to marry the business world, the marketing and business world with the entertainment world, and that's why I've been doing that for so long, and it's great, and I've developed the stability that I was always looking for over the years. So I'm at a really good place. My children are older.
Well, I was bringing that up because you have several TV series on here, but you also have some short films on here. I'm wondering, are you working now more as a passion, like hand-picking your projects based on how you feel about them versus a paycheck? And how does that feel versus where you were when you started?
Yeah, absolutely. I am looking for, to answer your question directly, the short version is yes. I'm looking for things that I'm looking for writers, directors, producers, and people that want to work on something that's going to be significant, that's going to go someplace. I want to make sure that I look, when there's an audition, I literally look everybody up before I do everything and see what kind of work they've done in the past. One of the things we're all limited in time, so I don't want to go and obligate myself to something when I know that, maybe they don't have past, because if I could see like a link that's off in something they've done in the past, I may choose not to do that project. Mm-hmm. But you can tell, I don't want to exclude somebody that is so passionate. They're like, really close to being where they're trying to go. So I really look at, what type of project it is, what type, the writing, what type of, what's the movie at, what's the project about, and their past work. So I do handpick things, and I try to be as strategic as possible, and just simply because we're all limited in time, and I am getting more stuff, so I want to make sure whatever I do that it's the best project possible.
Yep. You got to make it worth your time. Do you think an agent holds you back from doing those passion projects by saying, do they weigh in or even not even present you with a project you might be interested in because the paycheck's not there?
No, I know there's obviously the agent has to get you focused on, the agent has to make money. And as a businessman myself, I understand that. And so I think most people understand there's, there's an investment. And when you're working on let's say a short film, or even a trailer for it, I worked on something. I'll tell you about that in a second. But the agent and manager they'd be okay with it, because if it's something that could help, such a good scene that I think we all think on the same lines. If I'm working on a short film where it's a recognizable, where I know that these people are trying to get an award and we could get recognized and really good publicity from it as far as being an excellent, film itself or whatever, they'd be with that too. Okay. But their ultimate goal, it always has to be, they have to be to make money.
Yep.
So that's understandable. We all do. Cause that's, if you look at a hospital doesn't exist. They're for profit. They have to be able to pay their bills. So, and I'm cognizant with that, just with agents and stuff. So, a lot of the short films I may work on, you obviously make sure it's not going to get in the way, but I've learned how to strategically make everything work and fit in.
Let's talk about a couple projects. First one I want to go back to is from the late 90s, because it was funny. I was listening to a show that you were on, and you mentioned Jesse, and I thought, oh, my kids watch Jesse. I know all about that show. And then I look it up. Nope, it's the Christina Applegate show from the late 90s that I don't even remember. So did you get to work with Christina Applegate?
I did. My scenes were with her directly, and it was a blast. It was a great. The sitcom was interesting because the sitcom was a little bit like a soap, because you have 4 or 5 cameras, and there's a little bit like theater because you have you have an audience watching you. And then typically with that, you would have like 2 days of let's say rehearsal and blocking, and then on like a Thursday you film. So it's a lot of preparation that people go through when they're doing these sitcoms. But yeah, I had a chance to work with her, and then I had a blast. It was definitely, I every day I pinched myself because I was very excited to be in Hollywood on the Warner Brother lot. And of course, I literally go, when you're on the lot, you're on the lot. So, let's see, you have breaks and stuff like that. Cause I was on the whole, I got to work with them most the whole season, except I guess starting 3 episodes. But you'd go outside, and there's like basketball courts. And I remember I would play, and George Clooney, I think, was on the one show. And you would have George Clooney playing you're playing basketball with George Clooney.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's like everybody was you're playing. You go out to the basketball court there, and like midday, you're out there playing ball with all these people you've watched for TV over the years. It was really cool. Because you have all the sets. You have all the sets were there. So you just saw everybody. I think I saw everybody. I saw everybody that was on Warner Brothers, and I think I saw Mark Wahlberg. He had a bike and he was like riding through, and he was working on something, and everybody from ER, and it was a pretty cool experience working on the show and just being on the lot with everybody.
Yeah, and I wonder what working with TV George Clooney is like versus working with film megastar George Clooney. I wonder how that's changed.
I don't know. I've never worked with some. But my goal now is to work with everybody.
Oh yeah.
But playing basketball, definitely it was definitely like anybody else, want to do a good job, make every shot, and very competitive is what I remember. But that's been a long while because that was almost 20 years ago. But I do remember competitive, very competitive.
A couple of years ago, a very relatable topic, even till now, a project came out called The Opiate Diaries, and you were in that playing a doctor. Kind of shows the range of your roles, that you can kind of be anything. And tell us a little bit about this film. I think it's on Amazon Prime now, right?
It's on, yeah. The Opiate Diaries is on Amazon Prime right now. I'm proud of it just simply because, my upbringing. I come from a religious family, Catholic. But I believe in the golden rule. So I'm not. I think as long as you're practicing religion, practicing the golden rule, that's good. But for me, I do believe in giving back and doing things that have a meaning and doing things that could help people. And so if you're working on something that could have that kind of impact on somebody, that it really makes me proud. And I know my father, who since passed, he was always about, he knew my desire to work in the film industry, but he was always about working on a project that would help people. And he always wanted me to work on something religious, Mm-hmm. And in a way, these group of people that producers are very religious, and it does have the ability that if people see it, they could make a different decision, or it could educate people where they could help somebody else out before they make a certain decision, or if they're involved in something. And so it really goes into how dangerous opioids can be, from Vicodin to anything stronger. And so whenever we get hurt, we have pain, it's a very difficult thing, but people need to understand how dangerous pain pills can really be and how addictive they are. And it's just really sad because, I have knock on wood, I have an addictive personality, so I understand. I was addicted to cigarettes. It took me years to quit, and I gained an empathy for anybody that had an addiction. And so for me to be able to find a way to give back to that, and I did quit. I quit smoking when my son was born, because I wanted to be there. I knew if I didn't stop, that I wouldn't be there to see my grandchildren. So was really important to me. So that was really the catalyst. Having a son, it helped me quit, but it also gave me empathy, and I think the world needs empathy because we don't want to be sympathetic, and we don't want to just say stop things. We need to understand what people are going through. Mm-hmm. And, when you watch this movie, is a good understanding. It helps you understand what people are going through. Now, I play the opioid doctor. So I play the doctor who's kind of causing it all. But at the same time, much like myself, he's saying, in the film, if you watch it, we need to take these, pain pills for certain things, but we need to do it constructively. We need to be careful what we're doing and be careful not to be addicted. So that's why I'm proud of that film.
And how did you end up quitting smoking? Was it just your son being born and you wanting to make sure you were alive? Was that enough, or what process did you use?
No, that's a good question. No, it's by the way, I really appreciate your questions. You're a really good interviewer.
Thank you.
I definitely appreciate your questions, but it was a really hard thing. to me, when I look back at when I had to quit, I felt like I had to be a soldier marching into the biggest battle of my life, which it was, and which it is for everybody. So for me, it wasn't just the idea, obviously the biggest thing was I wanted to be around for my children and my grandchildren and things, but it was very difficult. And I did a couple things to quit. I took the pill. There was a pill called Zyban, which is really found out was Wellbutrin, so it relaxes you. So I had to take the pill called Wellbutrin or Zyban, and I say that with caution. So don't do anything without consulting your doctor,
for sure.
Obviously. But
yeah.
For me, what I did was something called Zyban back then, and it relaxed you. I also did. They had this gum. It was like a nicotine gum that you could take, and then for me, I tried the patch thing, but with the patch, there's no control, because when you have the urge, you need that fix right away. And the patch didn't really cure the urge. When the urge came on, it just didn't work for me. I needed to have something when the urge came that would dissipate. The gum was the thing that did that for me. And then the last thing was a mantra, and it was there was a mantra. I was flipping through the channel, and one day, around this time, I was working on quitting, and I believe she's an evangelist. Her name is Joyce. I think it's Joyce Myers. And remember, this is like 20 some odd years ago. Yeah, Joyce Myers. Let me see. Yeah, Joyce Myers. Joyce Myers Ministries. And I wasn't like, I knew who she was. I watched her a little bit, but I didn't, it's not like I was doing all the time, but I just happened to be just flipping through the channel. I don't know what possessed me to stop for a second, but Joyce Myers started talking about, if ever you're going through something in life, remember it's not going to be that way forever. And she said, there's something in the Bible called, and she said, this too shall pass. And I thought, wow. And I realized, when you're smoking cigarettes, and you're trying to stop, because I spent years trying to stop. And I didn't smoke very long. I started smoking really late in life. I started smoking in my, I think, late 20s I started smoking really late. But once you become addicted, it's really hard to stop. And she said this mantra, this too shall pass. And I had to really examine, because for me to quit, I wanted to attack it every which way possible. But I knew it was a challenge, because they say, quitting the nicotine could be one of the hardest things you've ever done. And it is. But I thought back before I smoked, I never had a desire to smoke. And one of the hardest things is when you try to quit, you think, am I going to have this strong desire forever? And I had to use my thoughts and realize that, well, when I was younger, I never had the desire to smoke and everything was just fine. I'm not going to feel this desire to smoke forever, because I think that's what scares everybody, is that you think you're going to feel like you need to smoke forever, that you're never going to feel better, that you're always going to I'll use the word fiending, that you're always going to be fiending for this cigarette.
Right.
And the answer is, once you go to a certain point, you won't even think about it anymore. And I knew that I could get myself to that point where, because I know I existed for most of my life without the need for a cigarette. So the mantra helped me. By saying the mantra, when the overwhelming urge came, I would say, this too shall pass. I am not going to have this urge to smoke a cigarette forever. And that's what Joyce Myers gave me. And it was accidentally something to the channel. So what I did was, it was 3 big things that were the catalyst to help me quit smoking. And that was, I did Zyban, a pill that relaxed me. I did the gum, so when I did have the urge, I could chew the gum
right away.
And then right away, I could chew the gum right away. And then I did the mantra. Now, I knew that there are certain things I'd work on doing, but I knew that I had to give myself some type of freedom as well, though. And I knew that I didn't want to take the pill stuff forever. So I knew there would be a timeline that I at some point, I'm not going to take the pill anymore.
Right.
But I said, you know what? I'm going to give myself forever to take the gum. That if I can never feel better, I'll let myself take the gum forever. You know what I mean? Because I think the gum is going to be way better than the actual cigarette itself.
Sure.
So I gave myself that kind of leeway. And then, so I went on my mission to quit. And crazy enough, my uncle was coming to visit me, and he was a chain smoker, and he smoked all the time. And I knew, because he was coming to see my son, and I knew that there's never a good time to quit. So I forced myself to quit when my uncle was coming. He was a chain smoker, and I knew I'd be around it. It was difficult.
Yeah.
It was very difficult. But again, there's no good time to quit. And so I knew that I had at that moment to do it, and I did. And then so I did the mantra. When I had the feeling, I'd do my mantra. This too shall pass. I had the gum. I ended up doing the Zyban stuff for the Wellbutrin for about probably a month, and then I stopped that, and I was fine. I continued the gum. I started cutting back and cutting it in half and then quarters, and then so I did well. I was able to do it. I kept doing the mantra and the gum, but cutting back. And then I think I was about 6 months out without smoking one cigarette, but I was still doing the gum. And my son's uncle, my son's uncle, said to me, "You still chew that gum?" And I thought, maybe he's right. I need to now work on quitting this gum. So I then, so now I then 6 months later, I quit the gum, and I haven't looked back yet. It's been, it was when my son was born, so it's been over 18 years since I've smoked a cigarette. So
cool.
It's one of my really, I'm a proud accomplishment. But it also makes me understanding of others when they do have an addiction to anything. The addiction I had to overcome with smoking. But there it is. So I'm glad I was able to give that out on public and tell that story because, if you're going through that. Now they have the vape stuff, but the vape is still just as bad.
That's what
so
I hear,
if
yeah.
you use that and you wean yourself off the vape eventually, but try some of my things like this too shall pass. But Joyce Myers gave me that. And a lot of times if I hear anybody going through something hard, the feeling you have is not going to be forever. It will pass.
Very true. Just like the COVID thing. We say that all the time. This won't be like this forever. It will pass. It's seeming like forever, but it will pass eventually.
That's really good. You're right. Even like now, I do find myself, I try to be positive, but I do find myself feeling a little bit, down about, the state of affairs right now.
Right.
And I thank you for reminding me of that because I think we all know these things, but we have to get constant reminders. And that's a really good point. That it won't be like this forever. And that, things will get better.
Well, I wanted you to tell that story too because my brother struggled with smoking for years, from a teenager until just like 3 years ago. And that's why I was wondering what your process was because his was very difficult. He tried to quit several times, never, was able to quite do it. And then this last time he's just like, I got to be done with this. And it's amazing. He's like, my taste of smell has come back and I taste foods in a different way now. And so that's pretty cool.
Here's the other thing too. I had to learn to, all my emotions when I was smoking were tied to a cigarette. And what I mean by that is I'd learned how to deal with my emotions again. And I'm talking when I woke up in the morning, I have to have a cigarette. It would wake me up. When I was overwhelmingly happy, oh my gosh, I'm so happy I have to have a cigarette. If I was getting ready to work on a project, I better have a cigarette first. If, I'm really angry and upset, I need to have a cigarette. Every emotion, good or bad, was tied to a cigarette. So I had to find a new way to deal with all of my emotions, whether it was super highs or super lows. And so, you don't realize how you can tie yourself into how cigarettes can tie into your emotions. But I see other people have done the same. I'm super angry, I need a cigarette. I'm super bored, I need a cigarette. It's been too long, I need a cigarette.
Yeah.
I'm waking up right now, and so I had to relearn these emotions. Because one thing is when you do start quitting, I remember someone telling me this, there's going to be something that's going to really upset you, and you just are going to have to be ready and not go after that cigarette. And so that's, if anybody out there is working on quitting, just know that.
And what's funny, Joe, is that you're mentioning all this stuff, and I'm thinking, smoking isn't a problem for me, but we often put food along the same lines as those emotions. And I know you're a very healthy eater and all of that. But for some people who really struggle with weight and with food, it's kind of the same thing. I have to, when I'm really happy, I got to do something else other than celebrate with like ice cream or, something like that. Those are all things that are very interchangeable to a lot of different addictions. So the advice is kind of multifaceted in the way that you can apply that to quite a few different addictions that we find ourselves falling into.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And food, because, I know starchy carbohydrates, your potatoes and breads and things like that are addicting, and you do have to work on things to lose that addiction. So, but yeah, you can apply it to food. And then, one thing though too, when you are working on something like this, having a strong goal is important too. So, for example, for me, part of my living was doing the fitness stuff. So I had a really strong goal that I was working towards to help me, work on the diet. And then of course, with the cigarette thing, my goal was to be around for my grandchildren and to be able to live a longer life. Because I know it would be cut short if I didn't do this. So you have to have it tie it to a goal when you're working on quitting something or an addiction.
Now, I've got a couple fun questions before we end that I want to make sure we get to. The hook of our show, Fancounters, is we like to ask our guests about their encounters with people who are fans of them. So I want you to think back to your career or throughout the years, if you've had people come up to you that maybe saw you in something and they reacted weird or wild or crazy. Maybe you had a stalker. What comes to mind when you think of the fans and the encounters you had with them?
I would say there was probably 3 different occasions that I can remember. One was when I had the fitness book, because I had a fitness book that was out for over 20 years, and it was selling in Barnes & Noble all over the country. And, my name's in there, obviously. And I had people, somebody reach out. I would get phone calls. I'd get people reach out to me. And at that point, it was kind of scary. The fact that they could reach out to you and send emails, they'd find a way to find me. Yeah. And so that was scary. That was back in New York when I was younger. And so that's, that was a little bit concerning. But then I've gotten some emails where someone said, hey, could you mail a headshot or something? And that's obviously flattering. It's very, very, very few. And then I think in New York, I remember I used to go to a certain gym and there would be people that would watch certain things and like, hey, I just saw you on that show. And I think I get more flattered, than I guess they do. So for me, I was just so happy someone recognized me in something, and then of course that happened. I can say 2 things. So then, I was visiting, my son and I were somewhere and someone looked at me and they said, hey, I saw you on this show. And, of course, because they said to me, you look familiar. And they say, I remember seeing you on the show. And of course, that made me I was more excited about that probably than they were, obviously. And then, so I always find it exciting. So I'm not at a point where, people are like screaming. I always joke around and when I'm on something and I tell somebody, oh my God, everybody's chasing me. I can't walk around anymore. And I like to, it's getting really bad. But really it's nothing but crickets.
No, that's all right.
But I have had people that work with me watch stuff. And, at the beginning I wasn't really saying anything. And I'd have people say, hey, you know what? I just saw you on the show. And they knew it completely. It was me. And they saw me on it. So that was pretty cool. So for me, I just love it when someone recognizes me from something. I want to get more information and details. Did you watch the whole thing? Did you like it? What did you think? So I don't think anybody could ever really get tired of it. I guess if you get to a certain point, I guess everybody really needs to remember you're there for these people anyway. And if it gets to a point where you feel like the only time it would be bad is if you felt like you're in danger. But I have felt like that when I was younger with the book. I just felt a little bit weird. It was kind of weird. But I can see how some people can get, a little nervous. But for me, I'm just happy to be recognized.
Well, speaking of being recognized, you were at I forget where you were, but you were at a flea market or something. When you recognized somebody that you were starstruck around, you found the host of American Pickers, which I know is one of your favorite television shows. So that had to be pretty cool. But my question about that is, I also know you're a collector. So what in your collection would American Pickers be interested in?
Everything.
Wow. Well, tell me some highlights. What do you collect?
What would they like? I think, what would they like? That's a good question. Because, I do watch the show because I know things that they won't like or would like. They actually have this old telescope. It looks like one of those telescopes that somebody on a pirate ship would have. I think they made like that. I have one of the things I found that would be one thing I think. I have a top hat from the 1800s. That's the beaver skin or beaver fur top hats from the 1800s. They'd probably be interested in that. I have binoculars from the Civil War, which they may be.
Wow.
They would probably take an interest in, I think. And then one thing I think they would take a good interest in would be I found. So I go and look for stuff everywhere, no matter where it is. But I went to I'm going to say I do go to thrift stores and look for treasures, and some people don't like to admit it, but I'm going to admit it because that's my.
Oh, that's all right. That's a good hobby.
Because of this stuff. Yeah, I go to thrift stores. You never know if you're going to find something. So I looked into this one cabinet thing, and I'm always honestly that's my I would say guilty pleasure is I love looking for treasures, and I'm just I just can't. I go crazy over that stuff, but I found this. It was like this silver kind of cup, and I looked at it, and I saw this engraving, and the engraving on it was, it had this year, so it was like an old silver cup, and the date on the cup is what really caught my attention because it looked like a trophy kind of cup, and it's like a small thing. It's only about 3 inches high, but the date on it was 1909. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. So I think I paid $9 for it or something. It's really inexpensive, or $4. It's really cheap. But I looked it up, and on the trophy, it says won by Thomas G. Bundy for Hotel Raphael, 1908. So I looked it up, and it was a tennis trophy for a fellow by the name of Thomas Bundy. Huh. Now in LA, it's a very famous street called Bundy Drive.
Yep.
And I ended up doing the Google research on it, and this was a trophy from the guy that the street was named after, Thomas Bundy. He was actually a tennis player. So I got some California history. Wow. And I found this trophy that was won by Thomas Bundy, who 1 year later won, I think the U.S. Open doubles or something back in 1910, and his daughter ended up becoming one of the most winningest tennis players ever. Her name was Dodo, and his daughter was a tennis player. So they named the Bundy Drive that we all know of in California, the famous Bundy Drive, was named after this Thomas Bundy. But not because of his tennis, but because he became a real estate investor. So I found something, this huge treasure, which I think they would probably get a kick out of it.
Oh, for
this
sure.
Trophy that was from Thomas Bundy, 1909, that the street was named after, the famous street in LA was named after him. And it was just to find, these are the things I find that I just go crazy over.
Well, what I'm going crazy over right now is looking at a picture of Thomas Bundy as I'm Googling. The guy's playing tennis in khakis and a belt and dress shoes. I'm like, seriously? And there's multiple pictures of him in this outfit wearing this ridiculous attire.
And isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So this guy, Thomas Bundy Drive, he was a tennis player, became an investor, and you may be looking at the old picture from the Hotel Raphael, which burned down. And this thing, I think that hotel burned down a year after he won this trophy. And so what a great piece of California history to know all that. And I think the thing you're looking at was actually at the Hotel Raphael. It may have been there because I think you see, he's wearing like these khaki pants.
Yep.
And like the wooden racket and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So I that's one of the pictures I saw when I did the research. And so that's, when you craft stuff like that, you really feel like, the reason I love archaeology is you feel like you're part of history when you own a piece of it. And that's just the excitement. I'm holding this thing that was given to him, that he won, And so, I just find it extremely exciting.
That's amazing. Well, I really appreciate your time with us today, Joe. It's been a great time learning about more of you. You're a really good storyteller. And what I meant to tell you at the top of the podcast is it's actually amazing because not only are you a successful business person, you've worked on Wall Street, you've starred in, all these soap operas and movies and short films and television series and all this stuff. You've got a great way of telling a story, and you don't have a podcast. There's 700,000 podcasts, and you're not one of them. What's up with that?
I don't know. Maybe you've given me an idea. Maybe you've given me an idea.
It would be one I would listen to because with your business smarts, the way that you know how to market not only yourself, but, for your job, you've got a lot of stuff to offer. That would be a good podcast.
Well, wow. Well, thank you very much.
My thanks to Joe Finfera for joining us on the show today. Elizabeth, I hope you were encouraged. He's got a lot of words of advice for just how to live a great life. And I know you're trying to do that too, even though you've got kind of feeling like you're stuck at home with the whole virus thing, but you're still going out there and going on vacation because I saw pictures of you up in Door County, which is a vacation area in Wisconsin, way up north on the little islands off. Like if you hold up your right hand and palm forward, see where your thumb is. That's where Door County is. Okay, but so you were up there living a good life.
We are, and from a person who kind of has a marketing background as well, I think he's very inspirational and really a great guy to listen to. But yes, it's for our family. We're not leaving the state during this time of pandemic, but and so our month long, usually in the summer, got canceled. But it's nice to be able to just kind of get away from a weekend and not have the daily routine and the daily grind of what you have to do and get to go see something new. And you got to find the positive in this mess. You have to, or we'll all go crazy.
And, I was saying this to somebody the other day. We're about to go to Door County, and we're going to leave our hometown, which we have not left almost in months. I mean, we've maybe gone 15 or 20 miles away, but that's it. Like, we've barely been anywhere. So it's going to be interesting to see a different part of the state and see what they're doing with this whole COVID thing. So what did you experience when you were up there? Was stuff open?
Well, yes. The county itself, which it consists of the very long peninsula, had only had like 30 cases in the entire 3 months. And so there were lots of open air things that did not require a mask. There were some businesses that asked you to put a mask when you came on. It said on the door, masks required. So we literally I kept a bag around, in my purse, and we would put them on and take them off and put them on and take them off. But it was nice to not have to have them on everywhere we went. We didn't feel like we needed to have the masks on when we walked the streets of the great little towns. But we did put them on when we went into smaller spaces, for instance, shops or restaurants or things like that. But I did, for the first time in Door County, eat inside of a restaurant, which I don't typically do. Every other time we have eaten out has been on outdoor dining. But, of course, we went to the world-famous Al Johnson's in a place called Sister Bay, which is Swedish. And they have goats that eat the thatched roof. So there are goats on their roof outside. And it's just a fun restaurant. But we felt very safe. They were very spaced out inside, and our waiter wore a mask. And so we felt okay eating inside. But it was very nice because it was like a different world where we live closer to Milwaukee County, where it's got a third of the COVID cases in our state. So we're very cautious of what we do. But when you get up north, it's much, much lax because there's so few people that are sick.
Thank goodness for that. As the audience knows, I've got twin 8-year-olds, and they do not want to wear a mask. And as of July 10th, with the date of this recording, we are not mandated to wear masks. Now, their papa and grandma owed them an LOL, You know what those little dolls are.
Yes. Like
they
some
owed
doll,
them
yeah.
that for a reading thing that they did. And so they were going to go to Target. And as a way to practice the mask thing for the vacation that's coming up in Door County, they're like, let's wear our masks to Target to get this LOL. And they said no. They did not want to wear a mask. So much so that you have to understand, they have like 30 of these toys. They love them. And they would do anything to get another one. But they wouldn't wear a mask.
But not put on a mask?
No.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. You'll need to be able to put on a mask to go into some of the stores.
Well, we're gonna go out today,
Clearly.
and we're gonna find them a fun mask. In fact, we ordered some cat masks from Amazon, but unfortunately, they're not going to be here in time. And it's really funny because everybody picked one out, I think, based on their personality, and I have the grumpy cat mask because that's how I feel. That's how I feel about wearing a mask. So I'm going to show that on my outside thing. So I wish that those came in time, but we're going to go out and we're going to find a couple nice pattern masks that they can take with and wear and hopefully feel decent about doing it. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yikes.
well, I hope you have a good weekend.
Well, me too. I'm so glad I got to be on this episode. I miss all of you, and hopefully we'll be back in the studio soon so I can be in more of our podcast.
Yeah, we've got some good guests coming up that we're working on to bring, and I think we're going to have a young star on the show next week. Just firming that recording date up, but we'll see if we can't get you in for that, and if not, soon after.
Great.
All right. Until next week, make sure you tune in every Friday to Fan Counters, and you can listen to our back catalog with Elizabeth in case you miss her. I know I do. And always keep in touch. You can email us at hello@fancounters.com and follow us on Instagram at FanCountersLive. That's going to do it for us this week.
Hey, we have a Facebook group.
Oh, yeah. You want to tell them about that?
Sure. You can find us at Facebook Fan Counters or our private group, the Sharpie Nation.
Yes, you can. All right. We'll talk to you guys next week.
See ya. Bye.